Good afternoon. Given the controversy surrounding Derek Hammersell and his actions, I felt it was extremely important to directly address the residents of Kent about this situation and what has occurred. Before I go into my comments, Chief Padilla is going to provide us with some context and history surrounding our decision-making process and the handling of this situation. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. As you're aware, this is an incredibly important discussion, and I want to ensure that I provide the most accurate information that I can. So for that reason, Mayor, I'm going to be looking at my notes from time to time because it's vitally important that we get this right. So let me start by acknowledging this incident and what has followed has been devastating to our community. It's been devastating to our department and the years of work that our officers have put in to ensure that we are building strong relationships with our community, that they can trust us, that we represent, that we are not what the negative stereotypes of law enforcement are, because we're not. But unfortunately, this incident does really impact that. And so for that, I am both tremendously sorry and embarrassed. I want to make it crystal clear that the actions of Derek Hammersell should have not happened ever. And that where we are today is that the only suitable resolution to all of this is that he no longer be a part of our police department, no longer be an officer with us. I do also want to note that this investigative file is extensive. It is hundreds of pages long, and I do not have perfect recall of all of its contents. For that reason, I'm going to provide an overview summary of the events, as I don't think we will have time to go through all of its contents in this setting. So let's talk about the incident. This was brought to our attention in September of 2020 by employees. What followed that was that I called for an internal investigations to be conducted to look into the matter. I do want to point out that while there's been much made about the culture of our department, the truth is that most of our internal affairs investigations start because our employees come forward. They do the right thing, they make us aware, and they give us the opportunity to investigate. And that is exactly what happened in this circumstance. The initial allegations brought forward were as follows: that the employee placed a printout of the rank insignia for a Nazi SS general on his door of his office. And in a separate incident, not related, he was alleged to have encouraged a group of detectives to lie about the presence of uniform resource locators, URLs, related to social media alias accounts that had been requested in a public disclosure request. To ensure that an unbiased and thorough investigation was completed, we retained an independent law firm to complete the investigation. Once the process commenced, the following allegations came to light: that the employee made an inappropriate joke about his grandfather dying during the Holocaust, that he asked an employee to Photoshop a personal photo of him using department resources, that he showed another employee a photograph on his personal cell phone of him wearing lederhosen with a mustache groomed in Hitler style, that he talked about another photo to an employee where he posed in the photograph wearing lederhosen and presenting a Hail Hitler salute, and that he was untruthful about knowing that the rank insignia that he posted on his door was attributable to a Nazi SS general rank. These additional allegations really intensified the trajectory of this investigation. It really indicated that there could be a strong likelihood that termination would be the end result of this. And Mayor and I had many discussions, and honestly, at the beginning of this, we thought that's where we were going to land, that we were going to separate this employee from employment. There has been reports about whether the employee was placed on administrative leave. I want to clarify this point and state very clearly, we did put this employee on administrative leave. particularly when it became apparent with the additional allegations that we were headed potentially towards termination. Again, I can't emphasize enough that termination was strongly considered during this entire process. Once the investigation was completed, we received the file from the investigator listing findings based on the preponderance of evidence. We then took the additional step of hiring a second law firm that has well-established experience in labor law and disciplinary issues in Washington State. This firm reviewed the entire investigative process and provided legal guidance as to what discipline would be sustained by an arbitrator. It's important to note that we do this to ensure that we remove any individual or organizational bias in the process so that we ensure it does not adversely impact the outcomes. It should be noted that it is common practice for us to seek outside counsel to review investigations of this magnitude and provide independent recommendations on what discipline is legally defensible. This process resulted in sustained findings that the employee violated the following policies. City Policy 2.12, Harassment and Discrimination. Kent Police Policy 13.10, Unbecoming Conduct. And City Policy 2.09, Use of City Resources. As many of you have seen in prior incidents where officers have been terminated for misconduct and subsequently reinstated, we go to great lengths to ensure the disciplinary decisions we make are not likely to be overturned in a binding arbitration process. In my opinion, having an officer reinstated by an arbitrator with back pay and becoming virtually untouchable from that point forward is a far worse outcome than ensuring discipline is imposed, even if it's less discipline, but making sure that corrective action is taken and the employee can be held accountable through the progressive discipline process, including termination should any future misconduct occur. The standard of proof that applies to cases in which termination is the potential outcome is the standard of clear and convincing evidence. As I have been well informed by our legal advisors, this is a very high standard of proof, a standard that is much higher than preponderance of the evidence. The very clear and unwavering determination made from a legal perspective was that we did not have clear and convincing evidence to prevail at an eventual arbitration process for the discipline of termination of this employee. Other considerations that also would impact an arbitrator's decision and support or denial of our position includes the employee's work history. And while during this investigation several allegations came to light, prior to this employee had 27 years of service without any prior discipline. From a legal perspective, what that means is this was his first offense. Taking all of this into account, and after considerable discussion, analysis, deliberation, and quite honestly, a lot of sleepless nights for those of us that were involved, we made the legally defensible decision with the information we had, and clearly that was not enough. I'd like to also take some time to discuss additional things that have come to light, Mayor, as you know, regarding the culture of our department. I'll go through some examples here to be transparent, but I also want to talk about what we've done with each of these. The first one that I want to touch on is that the reality is we've had some social media posts, private accounts, private computers not related to work, that when seen put a negative perception on the hearts of our officers, and paint a picture that we don't support and don't want. One post in particular was a leadership quote from Nazi General Erwin Rommel. And what it was is a quote, a leadership quote that in and of itself is not an offensive statement, But where we're trying to get to is a place where our officers understand that because it's attributed to a Nazi figure, that we have to be sensitive to that and we can't have it. Despite it being something that was on a personal, private account, not available for public viewing, and quite honestly, technically, not something that we could forcibly go after as a government entity, we still took the additional step. I took the additional step of having a conversation with the employee, and after that discussion, the post was taken down. So yes, not a great situation, but know that we took action, the action that we could. Another thing I want to touch on is that, we have set about in spring of 2021 to implement an aggressive year-long list of training, particularly in the area of DEI. And in the spring, we had our first course, which was Race and Equity. It was a citywide course, Mayor, that you had all of our employees attend. And following the training, we surveyed our employees for feedback. And to be candid, what we got back from some of our officers was that there was resistance from officers to the training itself. But we pressed forward. We continue with several other training, and most recently in November, we hosted a class on police and community relations, and we did the survey after that event as well. And to show progress and sincere progress, the surveys in that training were overwhelmingly positive. In fact, the most common statement written down by our officers was that we needed much more. They wanted much more of this training. So we're making progress there too. I also want to be transparent in saying that when we had launched that training in one particular session, we had an employee who was emotionally impacted by the presentation, felt they couldn't handle that, and they walked out on the class. That employee immediately self-reported that they had left the class. That was addressed, investigated, and that employee received discipline in the form of a reprimand. Additional corrective action for that employee included being reassigned to a longer, more in-depth version of that training, which that employee completed without any further incident. Again, we have issues that come up, we address them, we're accountable to them. Lastly, in this regard, there's been much made about the way that we onboard our new officers and the negative information that they received. And I want to say that it has been a continual effort and will continue to be an effort to elevate that process, to scrub it for anything that isn't consistent with our values, isn't consistent with the highest standard in race and equity. And so that work continues, and clearly we had some work to do there, and we've done that. While it's evident that we must continue to improve in this area, I will point to the overwhelming work over the years done by our Kent police officers to serve with compassion and heart and care for our community. And that is evidence that I want to promote as well, to say we are not a racist police department. Our officers are exceptional people, and they put themselves out there every day to protect and serve us, and I don't want that to be completely undermined by this unfortunate incident. Because we are a department committed to being and having a culture that stands against racism and hate, we completed, like I said, in a very aggressive training regimen in 2021. Those courses included race and equity training, supervisor diversity training, acknowledging and managing implicit bias presented by Dr. Bryant Marks, and police and community relationships presented by Mr. Dwayne Bryant. That was a very tall order, and we got it all done. And we're not done. Moving forward, I am pleased to let you know that we've been in contact with several Jewish organizations who are deeply hurt by what happened, but also have reached out because they want to provide us training on Holocaust awareness with the goal of strengthening our understanding, empathy, and truly our connection to members of our Jewish community. I can't thank them enough for their approach to want to help us be better, and I am committed to ensuring that that training will occur as soon as feasible in 2022. Finally, I can't state strong enough that the conduct of the employee was wrong and should not have happened ever. It hurt our community and the work we continue to do in our department and has done over the years to build on our community relations and trust. I want everyone to know that we are dedicated, I am dedicated to the work ahead that is going to be needed to restore that trust. I strongly condemn the actions of the employee. I want our community to know that I believe that the only appropriate resolution to this matter, again, I'll say it very strongly, is that this employee no longer be an officer with our police department, period. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for your willingness to be open and have this conversation and your commitment to our community, our city, and our police department. Throughout the past several days, it's become quite clear to me that our community, that our region is hurting, and your trust in us has been damaged, and our response in handling this situation has fallen short. I want to apologize to the Kent community for the wound that this situation has caused and acknowledge the hurt and frustration that I have felt from Kent families. I want to thank those of you that have reached out to me and been willing to have those difficult conversations and provide constructive feedback on how we do better. As your mayor, the buck stops with me. It stops right here. I want you to know that I am committed to moving forward on our response to this issue with transparency, honesty, and integrity. And I want to be engaged with you, our community, as we move forward in the healing process. At the end of the day, it is absolutely clear that we have not done enough, and the people of Kent are rightfully holding us accountable. I am grateful for that, and I would expect nothing less from this city. I also want you to know that I strive each and every day to be a better public servant, to listen to you, to hear what you are saying, and ultimately act in the best interest of our community. I want you to know that I value and I validate the lived experience of our community members, and I want to adapt and grow as a leader so I can do my very best for you, the residents of the City of Kent. In regard to our decision on Camerzell's discipline, Chief Padilla and I chose what we believed was the most legally defensible decision for us at the time. And I'm going to tell you, it was not an easy decision to make. We were concerned that in this situation, an arbitrator would reinstate Derek Camerzell, leaving him undisciplined and without accountability. Following the release of this incident and the reaction from our community, we understood that our collaborative decision on this matter wasn't enough. And I want to apologize to our residents, businesses, and everyone that has been impacted by this decision. Honestly, we tried to mitigate the possibility that the city would face legal retaliation and an overturned termination. It is clear to me now that that decision did not go far enough, and our actions this week are the only acceptable ones. There is absolutely no excuse for Derek Camerzell's behavior and actions. This has hurt our community and hurt our officers and eroded the trust that they have worked so hard to build with the people they serve. Over the last several days, as this story has gained traction and online conversations have escalated, along with all of that, there has been misinformation that spread rapidly and turned to accusations of this city leadership and staff being supportive or even protective of Nazi ideology and racism. Again, I want to be extremely clear. Anti-Semitism, Nazism, white supremacy, bigotry, racism, discrimination, and hateful rhetoric of any kind have absolutely no place and no support in the City of Kent, at City Hall, or in the Kent Police Department. I can't make that point strongly enough. We are committed to our journey as an anti-racist and welcoming city. And I am saddened and frustrated that the actions of this employee and our response have cast a shadow over the crucial work that we have done and the progress that we have made together as a community to champion and implement racial equity, diversity, and inclusion reforms. That work must and absolutely will continue no matter what. And I welcome continued input and involvement from our community. In regards to more recent issues surrounding replies on the Kent PD Twitter page, I want you to know that the comments that were hidden were done so in accordance to our long-standing community standards and social media policy. Our policy explicitly states that we reserve the right to moderate those comments and/or replies that contain obscene language, defame an individual or an organization, or are not topically related to a post or to which that reply is attached to. I want to clarify this point. At no point in time was any comment or reply deleted. At no point in time was any comment or reply hidden that did not violate these policies. Something to note as well, that hiding a reply does not prevent anyone from seeing it who wants to. Specifically, comments containing contact information for myself, the chief, and the city council were never hidden, and that is contrary to what is being claimed by some individuals and organizations. But given those allegations, those concerns, for the time being, we have temporarily suspended our policy in the interest of transparency, and we will conduct an internal review of our policies and standards and its future implementation. Moving forward, we will implement additional oversight of the moderation of comments and replies on our social media. We have answered hundreds of emails, calls, direct messages on this issue, and we will continue to engage with our community in this conversation. This now brings me to a place where I want to touch on some additional information that's out there that lacks context, but is crucial for getting a full picture of what is happening. It is plain to see, it is completely obvious that this issue has caused significant outrage online and has received a lot of coverage, and rightfully so. People are hurt. I will say it has been extremely humbling and frustrating to see the extent to which blatant disinformation has gained traction online and devolved to personal attacks, vitriol, and unfounded accusations. And all of that takes away from the real issue at hand and the hurt and the conversations that we need to be having to move us forward. I completely support public disclosure efforts towards transparency and accountability, and I welcome ongoing conversations of our handling of this situation and how we should have and done better in the future. Like when I started, I wanted to say thank you to everyone that's reached out and provided me with their personal perspectives, the pain that has been caused, and the constructive ways that as a community we move forward. The sad thing is as this conversation has become public, there is a clear ongoing attempt to construct a narrative that our police department, the men and women who serve you every single day, and city leadership are protecting Nazi ideology. This is 100% unequivocally false. I've spoken with and heard from several of our officers over the last few days that are saddened and embarrassed by this incident and the way our department has been portrayed, and have encouraged us to right this wrong. While much work still lies ahead of us, we've made great strides here in the city of Kent to audit our internal processes and systems and create new positions and initiatives that provide opportunities for our residents' feedback and particularly consult with historically marginalized communities. Over the past few years, we have made sweeping reform in many of our departments, particularly in the police department, to advance our understanding and practice of equity. Recently, we launched our Community Immersion Law Enforcement Program, which pairs new officers with community organizations during their first 6 months before they ever go out on patrol. The purpose of this program is to build relationships and help our new officers truly get to know and understand the community that they will serve. We've conducted robust community engagement focusing on BIPOC perspectives and lived experience, and worked with community stakeholders to select areas of focus to co-design the priorities of our equity and strategic plan. After dedicating considerable time engaging and listening, truly listening to our community, we've established a race and equity commander position, completed a review and update of all use of force policies, and implemented updated de-escalation and use of force training. These are just a few of the initiatives that we have launched and are dedicated to. The men and women in our police department are committed to building public trust and legitimacy within our community through open communication and transparency with those that they serve. They are committed to building those genuine relationships. I have also been in conversations, you heard the chief talk about it, I've been in conversations with the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle about opportunities to engage our leadership in listening sessions, provide educational opportunities, speakers, outreach, and a process of moving us forward. I will continue working with them, as will our race and equity manager, to provide guidance as we continue the development of our race and equity strategic plan. I can't say it enough. Moving forward, I am completely committed to repairing the harm that has been done to our community, committed to rebuilding the trust and demonstrating our clear intent to condemn racism and hateful rhetoric and ideologies in our city wherever they may appear. We are dedicated to learning from this experience and the perspectives of our community. We are dedicated to doing better and being better. Additionally, I've been in touch with several legislators about our priorities in this upcoming session, including a legislative solution on police reform, which empowers us with the ability to terminate an officer when confronted with someone who holds ideas or acts in a way that does not align with our values, our culture, and our commitment to anti-racism. To our community, to the greater region, I want to say I am sorry. We've let you down. And I know that there is real hurt out there. You've taken the time to share that with me. You've taken the time to share that with the chief, our city council, and for that, I am grateful. There is nothing more powerful than dialogue and learning and understanding. It's how we move forward as a community. It is how we continue the journey that we are so dedicated to becoming an anti-racist and welcoming city. Kent is and will continue to be committed to making this a place where every single person, whether it be a resident, a business owner, a visitor, feels welcome and heard and a part of something that is so powerful, and that is community. As your mayor, you have my heartfelt commitment and dedication to all of this work. And I will say I am eternally grateful for the ability to serve you, the responsibility that comes with that. I take it very, very seriously. And I know that we can and will be better going forward. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and know that I am available for those conversations. I know that the chief is available for conversation. And again, we're better than this, and I know that we can continue to be. Thank you.